As Trump once again weighs fresh strikes on Iran, is Tehran now answering with one of its deadliest warnings yet, promising a response that could go far beyond the war's first round? When Iranian leaders threaten a blow more crushing than day one, are they signaling that any new U.S. attack will be met not with restraint, but with a far harsher second-round response? And as a key figure in Mojtaba's camp warns that any foolish move to restart war will backfire, is Trump being told in plain language that this time Iran feels more ready, not more afraid? With Pakistan's army chief sitting in Tehran as these warnings are delivered, is the self-proclaimed mediator now appearing to stand closer to Iran just as war fears surge again? And when both men call themselves soldiers of their nation speaking honestly, is Trump's longtime ally Pakistan quietly edging away from Washington's line and towards Tehran's narrative? Iran has issued one of its strongest public warnings of the war so far, just as Trump is reported to be revisiting military options against Tehran. As reports claim the White House is weighing fresh strikes, Iranian officials are warning Washington not to make what they call a foolish choice to resume full-scale hostilities. On May 23, Iran's parliament speaker used a meeting with Pakistan's army chief to declare that Tehran would never retreat from what it sees as its national rights, even under renewed pressure. Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf delivered this warning directly to Field Marshal Asim Munir in Tehran, ensuring that a key regional player heard Iran's message face-to-face. He accused the United States of showing no honesty in negotiations and said it cannot be trusted, framing Washington as the side that broke promises and agreements. Ghalibaf stressed that Iran's forces had defended the country with courage throughout the recent clashes, portraying the military as both resilient and ready. He added that soldiers understand the value of peace better than anyone, but insisted they will never accept national humiliation or surrender of Iran's dignity. Ghalibaf claimed that Washington effectively started the war while negotiations were still underway, accusing the U.S. of launching attacks in the middle of a supposed diplomatic process. He said the U.S. is now demanding new talks after breaking its earlier word, presenting this as evidence that Iran cannot rely on American promises alone. According to him, Iran used the ceasefire period not to stand down, but to rebuild its armed forces and sharpen its deterrence, preparing for the possibility of another round. He warned that if Trump restarts the war now, Iran's response will be harsher than the clashes that erupted on February 28, suggesting a more intense second phase. Ghalibaf said, and I quote, "Military men know the value of peace better than others, but they will never allow their country's dignity and rights to be trampled. We were in a ceasefire that you brokered when the United States broke its word, imposed a naval blockade, and now it is looking to lift it. If U.S. President Donald Trump makes a foolish choice and returns to war, Iran's response will be stronger and more destructive." Unquote. In the same meeting, Field Marshal Asim Munir told Ghalibaf he was glad Iran is led by intelligent people, offering an unusual public compliment from a U.S.-aligned military chief. Munir said that both he and Ghalibaf were soldiers of their nation speaking honestly, framing their exchange as a direct soldier-to-soldier conversation rather than mere diplomacy. His Tehran visit also included talks with Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and President Masoud Pezeshkian, showing that Pakistan's outreach went all the way to Iran's top leadership. All of this unfolds as one of Washington's key Arab allies has dropped a major revelation about a possible Iran-U.S. deal, adding yet another layer of intrigue to an already tense moment. A senior UAE official claimed that Washington and Tehran are now moving increasingly closer toward a possible agreement. The remark specifically referred to the tense negotiations surrounding the reopening of the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz. Anwar Gargash claimed there is currently a 50-50 possibility that the United States and Iran could strike a deal over the waterway. The close aide to Mohammed bin Zayed made the remarks while speaking during the Globsec forum held in Prague. Reports suggest the United Arab Emirates remains deeply concerned that Iran's continued defiance could stall negotiations indefinitely. The senior Abu Dhabi official also warned that Tehran should avoid overplaying its leverage during the ongoing talks with Washington. Abu Dhabi further demanded that Iran restore the Strait of Hormuz to its pre-war operational status without restrictions. The UAE presidential advisor said, and I quote, "Iran missed a lot of chances over the years because there's a tendency to overestimate their cards. I hope they don't do that this time. Negotiations just to reach a ceasefire and sow the seeds for further conflict in the future is not what we're seeking. And I think that the Strait of Hormuz clearly has to go back to the status quo, and this should be an international waterway. The Iranian nuclear program was our second or third worry. Now it's our first worry. We see that Iran is capable of using any weapon that it has in its hands, which is what we learned, end quote. Reports regarding a possible draft agreement between Iran and the United States were also allegedly leaked by a Saudi media outlet. Saudi-based news outlet Al Arabiya has claimed that it obtained what it describes as the final draft of a potential agreement between Washington and Tehran, though the authenticity of the document has not been independently verified. The reported draft is said to have been facilitated through mediation efforts by Pakistan, as tensions between the United States and Iran continue to intensify across multiple regional flashpoints. According to the report, the draft agreement primarily focuses on establishing ceasefire conditions, offering potential sanctions relief, and promoting broader regional stability between the two adversaries. The document is said to include provisions calling for a complete halt to military operations on all sides, along with an end to what it describes as an escalating media and information war. Another reported clause emphasizes respect for Iran's sovereignty, while also calling for strict non-interference in the country's internal political and domestic affairs by external actors. The agreement also reportedly seeks to guarantee freedom of navigation across key maritime routes, including the Persian Gulf and the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz. The draft reportedly calls for an immediate, comprehensive, and unconditional ceasefire across all domains of conflict, including land, sea, and air operations without exception. Both sides are said to agree under the draft not to target any military installations, civilian populations, or critical economic infrastructure during the period of de-escalation. The proposed terms also include a complete end to active military operations, alongside a simultaneous halt to what is described as an ongoing media and propaganda war. The agreement emphasizes mutual commitments to respect sovereignty, territorial integrity, and a strict policy of non-interference in each other's internal affairs. It also includes guarantees ensuring freedom of navigation across key waterways such as the Arabian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman. A joint monitoring mechanism is reportedly proposed to oversee implementation of the agreement and to resolve any disputes that may arise between the parties. The draft suggests that negotiations on unresolved or outstanding issues would begin within 7 days of the agreement being put into effect. It also outlines a phased approach to lifting U.S. sanctions, conditional on Iran's continued compliance with the agreed terms. The document is said to reaffirm both parties' commitment to international law and the principles outlined in the United Nations Charter. Once formally announced by both Washington and Tehran, the agreement would reportedly take effect immediately without further delay. The report further states that negotiations addressing remaining or outstanding issues between the two sides are expected to begin within 7 days of the initial agreement framework. Under the reported framework, the United States would begin a gradual process of lifting sanctions, provided that Iran fully adheres to the terms outlined in the agreement. However, the draft reportedly does not contain any explicit references to Iran's nuclear program or its missile capabilities, raising questions about the scope of the proposed deal. According to reporting cited by the Times of Israel, there is no clause in the document addressing Iran's stockpile of uranium enriched to 60% levels. The reported draft also appears to omit any restrictions or limitations on Iran's ballistic missile program, despite its significance in previous negotiations. Additionally, the leaked document reportedly makes no reference to Iran's support for regional proxy groups, which has long been a central concern for U.S. policymakers. Al Arabiya also reports that the agreement could potentially be announced within hours, although it is still described as pending final approval from both sides. If finalized, the deal is expected to come into force immediately once it is formally and jointly announced by both the United States and Iran. As of now, neither Washington nor Tehran has made any official public announcement confirming the existence or finalization of such an agreement. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's top diplomat has once again repeated demands for Iran to abandon its proposed Hormuz toll system.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you to this great country for hosting us. They've been phenomenal hosts. They've been great new members of NATO's, really model allies and great hosts. So it's a pleasure to be here. And it's always great to see you, Mark. And obviously, we're here to set the groundwork for what I think will be probably one of the more important leaders summit in the history of NATO. The president's views, frankly, disappointment at some of our NATO allies and their response to our operations in the Middle East are well documented. That will have to be addressed. That won't be solved or addressed today. That's something for the leaders level to discuss. In the meantime, there are other areas where we continue with cooperation. You saw the President's announcement last night with regards to Poland and deployment. That said, obviously the United States continues to have global commitments that it needs to meet in terms of our force deployment, and that constantly requires us to re-examine where we put troops. And this is not a punitive thing. It's just something that's ongoing, and it was pre-existing, all these recent reports and tensions and so forth. So that's a process that will continue, that I think in a very positive and productive way, and collaboration with our allies can reach decisions. But in the end, you know, like any alliance, it has to be good for everyone who's involved. It has to be a clear understanding of what the expectations are. And so certainly we'll try to lay the groundwork for that. One of the areas where I think we definitely can cooperate on is the defense industrial base. It is clear to the world, to all of us in the alliance and beyond, that we simply are not able to produce munitions today at a rate that are necessary for future needs. That's something that has to be addressed. That's something that we can work together on. That's something we want to work together on. I think it's key not just to production, but to interoperability. And so I imagine that'll be a topic of conversation. On the issue of Iran, the news this morning, I know it's early on it's still in the United States, a little later in the region, in the Middle East. But we await word on those conversations that are ongoing. There's been some slight progress. I don't want to exaggerate it, but there's been a little bit of movement, and that's good. The fundamentals remain the same. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. It just cannot. This regime can never have nuclear weapons. And to achieve that, we're going to have to address the issue of enrichment. We're going to have to address the issue of the highly enriched uranium. And then added to this, of course, is the issue of the Straits. Iran is trying to create a tolling system. They're trying to convince Oman, by the way, to join them in this tolling system in an international waterway. There is not a country in the world that should accept that. I don't know of a country in the world that's in favor of it except Iran, but there's no country in the world that should accept it. Right now at the United Nations, we have a resolution that is sponsored by Bahrain. We've been very involved with it. It has the highest number of co-sponsors of any resolution ever before the Security Council. Unfortunately, a couple of countries on the Security Council are thinking about vetoing it. That would be lamentable. We are doing everything we can, though, to achieve the sort of global consensus that's necessary to prevent this from happening. And we're trying to use the United Nations. Let's see if the United Nations still works. That's a place that we're going to try to get an outcome for. And obviously, I think almost every country represented here today has signed on as a co-sponsor of that resolution. And if they haven't, I'm sure they soon will. Because I don't know of anyone in the world that should be in favor of a tolling system in an international waterway. That's just not acceptable. It can't happen. If that were to happen in the Straits of Hormuz, it will happen in 5 other places around the world. Why would countries all over the world say, well, we want to do this too? Not to mention how vital and critical that strait is to every country represented here today, but frankly to countries not represented here today, particularly the Indo-Pacific. So we'll have a good meeting today. I hope it'll be productive. I expect it will be, and it'll set the groundwork for the leaders to meet in about 6 weeks. And we have a lot of work to do between now and then.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.